last name and
Okay.
spell it.
My name is Tamio Wakayama, and it's Tamio, Tamio. Wakayama is Wakayama. And I remember Julian.
Oh, no, wait a minute. I'll ask you a
Okay.
question. Yeah, I'll lead you in.
No, I was
Yeah.
just saying that
What?
he could do it in his voice that could melt butter, and it was like, Wakayama, you know. I can't do Julian's voice, but it was just far out.
All right, and I want to come back around and probably ask
Okay,
you that again.
all right.
All right, tell me what years you were in Atlanta and how old you were at the time and what you did while you were there.
I was, I don't know, about 21, 22, somewhere around that age, and I was in Atlanta from 63 till the end of 64, and I arrived in the Deep South on the day that the bomb exploded in the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, and in which 4 young girls were killed. And one thing led to another, and I discovered that the movement people would be meeting at the A.G. Gaston Motel, and I went over there, and the first person I saw was John Lewis, who was the chairman of SNCC at that time. And he introduced me to Julian Bond, his good friend, and some of the other people. And I gradually glommed my way into this community of amazing people who were leading this brilliant thing called the Civil Rights Movement. And I followed up on John's invitation to visit SNCC headquarters. And so after the funeral for 3 of the girls, I said, I'm going to Atlanta and I'll take anybody with me. So I had Julian in my car, Jim Foreman, the executive secretary, and Danny Lyons, they're brilliant photographers. So I drove them to Atlanta, and after a couple weeks there, volunteering as the janitor of the office at 8.5 Raymond Street and driving people to and from demonstrations. And my biggest asset was that I had a car. I had a 58 blue Volkswagen van, or a Beetle. And for SNCC, which was chronically had cash problems, here was this car and a driver, which I gave to the organization, or let the organization use it. And then after a couple of weeks, Foreman invited me to join the office staff of SNCC. So that was one of the proudest moments of my young life, because now I was officially a part of SNCC, you know, which was like leading this revolution that was radically altering the political and social landscape of not only America, but indeed of the world. So, yeah, that was my in a short form, my introduction to the movement.
And then how did SNCC, you somewhat answered this just now, but how did SNCC differ from CORE and let's say SCLC and other organizations?
Okay. SNCC was the young. It was the student arm. It was the shock troop of the movement, and it had gone into areas that nobody else would touch, because I mean it was like suicide to go in there, like areas in Southwest Georgia, Alabama, particularly Mississippi. And it was like Bob Moses and that small group of people that started to open up Mississippi. And if you were an Afro-American at that time, you know, the word was no, nobody goes into Mississippi. That's just suicide, and you'll get your ass killed when you go there. So, but we kind of ignored that, and so. I think the real thing of SNCC was that it was a student movement. I mean, it grew out of the sit-in demonstrations. And so like on the March on Washington, you had young our chairman, John Lewis, you know, the son of a sharecropper in Alabama. And I remember him so clearly, and like, cause you know, he didn't have that incredible rhetoric and smooth diction of everybody else, but there was a righteous anger to what he was saying, and so I could identify with him because of his youth and because of the way he spoke, and he brought a sense of reality to the situation. And I'm sure other people throughout, other young people, other students throughout the country and the world, you know, because that March on Washington was seen by a gazillion people throughout the globe. So I'm sure others, you know, as well as myself, were inspired by that.
And then you said you could speak on the desegregation?
Yeah, when I arrived in Atlanta, SNCC was involved in a very intense campaign to desegregate all the public facilities in the downtown core. And I went on one of these to Lebs, and I remember Judy Richards and other people sitting around there, and Danny Lyon getting very fired up. And that's the only time I've seen him lose his photographic cool, because Leb, who was a Jew, came out there, and Danny just put down his camera and said, "Leb, how can you do this? You're a Jew. Don't you know the camps? And you're doing the same thing those Nazis were doing." He just went off on it. So anyway, this intense campaign was going on, and so the Atlanta jail was filling up with the demonstrators. Unfortunately, a number of them were the office staff of SNCC. So Julian said, "Okay, we gotta keep the momentum going."
Oh, hold on one second.
All right. Burnout.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back in business. Okay, I can pick it up. I can pick it up. So Julian came and said, "Well, you know, we got to get more people out there, and we got to keep building this thing. And so why don't we have a mass rally at Morehouse and Spelman, two black colleges near the SNCC office?" And but there was nobody left in the office to produce a flyer to advertise this mass rally. So I said, "Well, I don't know, I've never done this kind of thing, but I'll go down and see what I can do." So I went into the offices of the Student Voice, which was our publication, and I found this picture that Foreman had taken on a previous demonstration. It was this Ku Klux Klan in a, you know, with a peak cap and the whole regalia, and it's a tight hitch on. He's like fat and ugly, and he's like grimacing out, and it was a tough shot. So I took this and I plunked it in the middle of an 8.5 11, and I got on the Verityper, and I knocked out 32 points. The face of Atlanta helped change it. Mass rally at you know, and all that. So everybody loved this fire, and then I said, "Oh, that's great." And Danny said, "Well, you obviously got some kind of eye for things, and so you know, you ought to try photography." So he lent me one of his spare Nikons. So I'd you know, go around the neighborhood and take pictures and whatnot. So that's how my career began. I mean, I knew nothing of photography before that, but again, that's what drove the movement. That's what drove SNCC. You know, like Julian didn't know how to run a major news bureau for the entire nation, but he did it. Mark Suckle didn't know how to run a printing press, but he didn't. I didn't know how to run a darkroom and a photo bureau, but you know, we all just kind of stumbled through with the confidence and ignorance of youth, I guess. But that was a serious engine that drove SNCC, that drove the movement, for sure.
Right, and then the Atlanta Inquirer,
Yeah.
which Julian edited. How important was that as an intra-informational tool at the time?
The Atlanta Inquirer.
Yes.
Okay. I don't really know. Okay. you'll have to refresh me on.
No, we can skip that. Then.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
we
skip
gotta
that,
skip-
because
we
I
can
can't,
skip
I
that,
can't
yeah.
go there.
Okay, so what is, but you kind of answered this too, but you might have another. What is your fondest memory of being a part of SNCC?
Of being a part of SNCC. Well, you know, people all kind of always ask me, well, what was it like for you as an Asian in the movement, you know? And so I think about that and I say, well, okay, is like being an Asian, I walked into, and being a Canadian Asian on top of everything else, I walked into a society in the world in the South that I would call, you know, the two solitudes, the black and white society, you know, which were it was just two different worlds. And being Asian, like, it was cool, you know, because they didn't know what the hell to do with us, because they didn't see very many of us. So we could easily slip between the two worlds. Like, I never had a fear of entering, you know, a segregated place. I just walk in there, and that's cool. And then into the black world, I could do kind of numbers there that a white person couldn't do, you know. So I can remember Stokely coming up one time, and he was always on the lookout for any semblance of white paternalism. So there was a scene where I drank and I turned bright red.